Hey everybody, Ryan here at Etrailer. Today on our 2020 Buick Encore GX ST, we're going to be showing you how to install the Roadmaster Direct Connect baseplate kit with removable arms. Before we get into that though, let's just take a couple of minutes, check this out, and make sure it's going to work for you. Before we jump right in, I figured it'd be useful just to kind of refresh ourselves on the main parts we're going to need to flat tow our Buick down the road in the first place. First part will be the base plate, and that's going to provide us with a solid and reliable connection point. That way we can hook our tow bar up to it. Tow bar will be the second component. This is going to be the actual physical link that connects the front of our Buick to the back of our motorhome. Third main part will be safety cables, and these are just there in the event of an unlikely disconnect. We're going to keep everything paired together. The fourth main part will be tow bar wiring, and what this is going to do is transfer the lighting functions from the back of your coach to the back of your Buick, keeping you safe and legal. And last but not least, the fifth main part will be a supplemental braking system. And what this is going to do is apply the brakes in your Buick whenever you hit the brakes in your coach, helping to bring you to a more complete and predictable stop. Something else that I do recommend picking up is the Roadmaster automatic battery disconnect switch. And I say that because the Buick does require the battery to be disconnected whenever you're flat towing. So as opposed to having to pop the hood every time, disconnect the battery manually, and go through all that trouble, with this setup, all you're going to have to do is push a button. That'll disconnect the power for you. You can flat tow. Whenever you're ready to unhook, you simply push that button. Everything will get powered up, and you'll be ready to go. So it just saves a lot of time. And then there's something else. It's called a stoplight switch kit. I recommend that if you're going to be using either one of these supplemental braking systems, the Demco Stay and Play Duo, which we used here today, or the Roadmaster InvisiBrake. And I say that because with that stoplight switch, it's going to give you an accurate reading in terms of what the brake pedal is actually doing and if the braking system is operating as it should. This is what the front of your vehicle can look like whenever you're not flat towing it, and I feel like that's pretty important, especially on a vehicle like the Buick. You know, it really clean SUV, and if possible, you don't want a ton of noticeable parts up here in the front. I don't really think it could get much better than this setup, to be honest with you. Everything's kind of tucked in back there, not super noticeable. You don't have to cut a bunch of stuff out of the front of your car to get this all to fit. So I think they did a good job in terms of that. I do like too, the base plate's going to have some bracketry on it that'll allow you to mount up your electrical connector and your breakaway switch for your braking system, which just kind of streamlines the whole process and makes everything a little bit easier on you. Whenever you are ready to hook up, everything's going to be pretty streamlined, to be honest with you. The kit uses these removable arms, so these are a direct connect style. And what happens, you put these in, rotate them about a quarter turn, they'll lock into place. Same deal for the one on the other side. And now, that's going to give us the attachment point to be able to hook our tow bar up. As far as getting the tow bar attached, really simple. All the other components are easy to see and get to. But with this being that direct connect style, it just lines up, put your pin through, and lock it down. So this base plate is going to work with those Roadmaster type tow bars, as well as some of the other manufacturers. What a lot of them are doing now is making adapter ends. So let's say, for example, you already have a Blue Ox tow bar, you really like one of theirs, but you want to use this base plate kit, chances are pretty good you can get the adapter in, swap the ends out on the tow bar, and allow you to pair it up with this base plate. This is how the Buick will look when you are ready to flat tow, and I like it. Everything's easy to get to, easy to see, looks organized, and so you can't really ask for too much more. Now with that said, this base plate is going to work with the ST models of the Encore. If you don't happen to have that trim package, there are other ones available that you can look into. I do want to mention the use of what's called a high-low adapter, which is this piece right here. And some of you may need it, some of you might not. And the reason you could potentially need it is to make sure that your tow bar is going to ride nice and level. That way everything pulls correctly and works as it should. So it's really easy to figure that out. You can pull your vehicle up to your motorhome, something like this, on preferably flat ground, and measure from the center of the pinhole down to the ground. In our case, that measurement was 16.5 inches. And then measure from your motorhome's hitch pinhole down to the ground. And you want that measurement to be within 3 inches. That's kind of the safe zone there. If it exceeds that, usually the motorhome's up higher. If it exceeds it, that's where the high-low comes into play. So on ours, we have a 2-inch drop, drops it down a couple inches, and allows us to make sure our tow bar is level. Other than that, you know, if I had an Encore and I was flat towing it, I definitely wouldn't hesitate to use a setup like this. You know, it looks good and it's easy to see and get to, so you really can't ask for too much more. In terms of the installation, not as bad as you might think. I've done quite a bit of vehicles, and this one probably falls somewhere in the middle in terms of difficulty. You know, so just take your time and stay focused. Really shouldn't run into too many issues. But with that said, if you'd like to hang around, we'll go ahead, pull into the garage, and get started on it now. To begin our installation, we're going to be here at the front of our Buick, and you can pop the hood. We're going to need to remove the front fascia, and so we can start by removing 3 fasteners on each side of our vehicle. The fasteners are going to have a T15 torque spit head. We'll pull that one out. This one we can skip. We can get this one and this one. And I want to mention, from this point on, anything we do to one side of the vehicle, we'll also do to the other side, because it'll be set up the same way. Just over here on the passenger side, we have our washer fluid bottle. There's a push pin fastener. We're going to remove that fastener, so you can take a trim tool or a flathead screwdriver, pry underneath the head of it, and then work that whole base out. With the fastener out, now you want to just grab this and kind of rotate it side to side, pulling up on it as well, and we can set our filler neck off to the side. Underneath the front of our vehicle now, we're going to have this underbody panel. We're going to remove it. So essentially just kind of all around the edges of it, there's going to be 7mm head screws. So we'll just work our way around and get them all pulled out. And in our case, back here, there's a push pin fastener in there. Yours may or may not be set up like that, but either way, all the fasteners are going to have to get removed. This looks to be the last one, and if it is, I missed one here in the corner. Once you get them all out, it should drop down and we can set it off to the side. On each side of the vehicle, there will be another push pin located in this area, so we'll get that removed. And if you kind of work over to the side there, there's going to be 3 T15 screws. If you pull this down, you'll see 2 13mm head bolts here. And on each side of our vehicle, we'll pull those out. Moving to your front wheel wells now. If you turn your tire one way or the other, it gives you a lot more room to work. There's going to be some torque spit fasteners, and up towards the top a little bit, there's a push pin. So we're going to get that removed. I believe there is 5. We have 5 of these T15, so we'll just work our way all the way around. So what I've done, put some tape around the seams here, because eventually we're going to be popping some of this plastic off. I don't want to scratch anything. But if you take your liner, now that we undid it, and kind of push it in, we're going to have the side marker light that we need to pop out. So you can unplug it from back here. It's kind of hard to get to. What I like to do is just push the light out of position. And I'll show you here once I get it. There's some tabs on the back that you push in. So that's how I was taking my finger and just kind of pushing in on that and pulling the light out. And a little bit easier to disconnect now. So there's a red tab. Pull back on it. And if you push down on the center, you can get it off. Sometimes they're tight, so it helps to have a screwdriver or something to give you a little more leverage. This is how pretty much all the tabs are going to work here in terms of getting them unplugged. If it's super tight and it's not working when you're pushing down like that, if you're really careful, you can come in and pry up on that to get it to release as well. So with the light out of the way, in our case we have this this sensor here too, and eventually we'll unplug it. This one's a little harder to get to, so I think we might release this plastic trim first and then make it easier to get in behind there. So with the plastic trim, kind of like the light, there's some keepers on the back side of it, and if you squeeze the sides in, you should be able to get this to kind of pop free. So you can start to get this popped out, which I've done, and it's really tight, so be careful. You can squeeze down on these things while you're pulling out, so if you need to come in from the back, you know, and with a pair of pliers or something, kind of squeeze that, pull it out. Using a trim tool like this too to get a little leverage on it definitely makes things easier. And that's actually what's kind of holding this whole thing in place here. So we're just going to work our way up until we get to about this point here. With our blind spot sensor, if you kind of pull out on them tabs a little bit, you can actually push that sensor through. And but this one, you can unplug it if you want. But since we have it released now, I'll probably just leave it plugged in and kind of push it through the opening there. If you kind of hold this trim piece out in the corner here, there's going to be a 7mm head screw. And since that is going to be one of the fasteners holding our fascia on, we're going to need to remove it. Now with an extra set of hands, we should be able to remove our fascia. So if you start in the corner, there's just some clips, you know, that this is pushed into. I have to lift kind of up on the front here to clear some of the components and carefully remove it back. There may be some electrical wiring. Looks like in our case, maybe on each side we'll have to disconnect. Here's one of the connectors. It works the same as the others. You have a red tab, push on it. Push down on the center. Or in the back like I showed you earlier to get it unplugged here. One here on the passenger side, same deal. Red tab back and separate it. And then with the fascia free, we can set this off to the side. On our air dam on each side of it, up at the towards the top of it here, you can trim it. I put a mark about in the area where we're going to cut. So I'm just going to use a pair of snips and separate it like that. To get the actual air dam removed on each end of it, you come in from the bottom, you're going to take a screwdriver, push up on the tab, you can get this out of the way. On each side of our vehicle, we're going to need to trim a small portion off of the front of our intercooler. So this is just these fins here. When you're doing this, be real careful. You don't want to actually hit the intercooler, you know, because then you'll have some issues there. So be real careful when you're doing this, just to trim off the small portion. I like to use a multi-tool because it kind of gives you some more control, but Dremel tool, maybe some snips, kind of whatever you got will work. So come in and get that done. Just over here on our driver's side, you'll see this small PCM. If you push up on them tabs, you can kind of pull this out. Just let it hang for now, and then we're going to have this big harness here too. You can just kind of pull out on that, and it'll release. Moving over here to the passenger side, we're going to have this air sensor here, and you'll need to disconnect it, which I've done. Same exact way that we've been doing the others. You know, that retainer clip pops out, you squeeze down on it, or carefully come in and pry up on the top to remove it. And then focusing over here by our washer fluid reservoir, there's some connectors as well. We'll disconnect this one, same, red tab, push down. These are a little different. You could take I just happen to have a pick. You can take a small flathead. But with these, there's really no retainer. You just kind of come in from the back, push up, and they will release. So what you can do now is just kind of pull all the wiring and tubing off of our fluid reservoir. There's a couple push pin deals up here. You can pop them out. And we are going to need to disconnect this. And so what I think I'm going to do, I got a piece of tubing here. I think when I pull these off, I'm going to try to loop them together. Hopefully this is long enough so I don't make a big mess, but we'll see here. With this, just carefully, work one of the ends of the rubber fittings off. I'll leave that almost ready. I get this one almost ready. That way I can pull them both off and hopefully don't spill everything here. We're going to remove the hardware now that's holding this in. It looks like there's 3. And it looks like they're all going to be a 10 millimeter. There's one here. We can lift this up and get it out of our way. Just over here on the driver's side, this big plastic piece, which you don't have to do this, but it'll help make things a little bit easier, give you more room. You can unbolt that. There's 2 10 millimeter head nuts you can pull off, and this kind of just pops out. That way we can kind of push it further off to the side, and when we're ready to drill our openings into the frame there, we'll just have a little more space to work with. You can grab the side-specific bracket, so check the diagram and the instructions, give you some guidance. And this is going to line up with our pinch weld up here like this. So you might be tempted to push this all the way back like that, but you don't want to do that. On this end here where it kind of starts to ramp up a little bit, you're going to want that corner to line up with the corner on our pinch weld. So like that. And holding this in a position where it needs to be, and then take a pin and use the holes in this bracket here to draw onto the frame. That way we can get these drilled out. We'll come in with the proper size drill bit and get these opened out. Once both of those are drilled out, you can take the plate, you can take the 3/8 by 1 1/4 bolts, and push the bolts through. For the bolts come through, you can take a split lock washer, put the head on, and then on the nut, or you can do this on the thread of the bolt, whatever works. Take some red Loctite, put it on the threads, and all the hardware that we're going to use to secure the base plate will receive some of this red Loctite. Doesn't come with it, but you can pick a tube up here at Etrailer. And the same deal for this one back here. Already got the Loctite on that nut, so we'll just get these started hand tight. We can grab these lower brackets, again, side specific. It's going to kind of sit like that. You can take the 3/8 by 1.5 inch bolts, put them through, a flat washer, split lock washer, and a nut. Get these hand tight. And same hardware combo for that hole there. Go ahead and grab the longer 3/8 bolt, put your Loctite on, flat washer, and I'll run from the bottom up like that, and another flat washer, split lock washer, and hex nut. You're also going to have these brackets, again side specific, but that hole there is going to line up the hole in the frame, and so it's going to sit something like this. So what I'm going to do, take the 1/2 inch bolt and flat washer and some Loctite. Helps if you have a magnet or something too to hold it, because you do have to kind of push it through a little opening there. So that's going to go through like that. And then you can put on another flat washer, split lock washer, and a hex nut. At this point, we can snug down all of our 3/8 bolts, so 9/16 socket and wrench, and we want to work from the top down. And in that same order, from the top down, you can come back with a torque wrench and make sure all the hardware is tightened down to the specs and the instructions. Now with an extra set of hands, you can get the center section into position. So the 3 holes of it are going to line up with these 3 holes and those 2 on that other bracket. So you'll put it in between them. You might have to kind of work things around or get it started kind of closer to the same time. It'd probably be a tight fit. If you kind of angle each side, at least get the top one to get started. You're going to take the little bit shorter 1/2 inch bolt, put on your Loctite, and push that through. Where the bolt comes through, put on a flat washer, a split lock washer, and a hex nut. Get it started hand tight. With this being kind of tight, you can take a pry bar, screwdriver, whatever you got, and kind of pull it into position like that, and then get the other bolt started. So these ones are just a little bit longer. Push that through, and we'll kind of just do this one at a time on each side, and hopefully everything will kind of pull right into place. So by kind of doing that one at a time, the base plate, you know, stayed in place, lined up. This hole here, same longer bolt. And again, on these 2, the back is just flat washer, split, and hex nut. But with them all started, you can then come back with a 3/4 inch socket and wrench and snug them down. This bolt that we put back here, at this point, grab your 3/4 inch tools and snug it down as well. With all that snug, don't forget to come back and completely torque down all of our 1/2-inch hardware. With the base plate completely torqued down now, you can reinstall your washer fluid reservoir and get everything hooked back up opposite way that you removed it. As far as this wire that was going to the air sensor on our intercooler, some side plates might have a large hole here. If it does, you can push the connector in through it to plug it back in. Ours didn't, but thankfully there's enough wire to kind of run it around and plug it back in to our air sensor. On the driver's side, you can resecure the computer and all this stuff too. Same or opposite way that we removed it. And now at this point, it would be a fantastic time to install some of your other flat tone components like wiring, braking system, things like that. And I say it because with the fascia off, you're going to have a lot more room to work. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. And once I have that wrapped up, then we can work on potentially trimming out the fascia and getting all that reinstalled. So I got the rest of our components installed on the front of our car, our braking system stuff and our wiring and things like that. And so now we can go ahead and get our fascia back on. So what you can do is reference the instructions. That usually gives you some guidance, but I'm going to just hold our fascia on here, kind of see where we need to trim and go from there. After holding this up, it looks like we might only have to trim out one little area, which is outermost part here. This opening definitely needs to come out. So I'm just going to use a pair of snips like this. Cut out another one on the other side of our fascia too, and see if it goes on. So this ended up working. I was able to get her fascia on. It was tight, you know, so just take your time working stuff around, get everything to pass through. One thing you might have to do is if you have a connector plug like this, if you can't get it to slide through, you might just have to take, you know, disconnect it, push the wires through, hook it back up out here. It was really close. You could probably do it if you pried up on it, get the whole thing through, but other than that, I think it turned out pretty good. So with this in place now, we'll go ahead and re-secure everything the opposite way that we removed it. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Roadmaster Direct Connect baseplate kit on our 2020 Buick Encore GX ST.